The scrapyard stretched endlessly, a graveyard of forgotten dreams and broken machines, floating at the edge of the Andromeda trade corridor. Rusted hulls drifted lazily in zero gravity, some barely recognizable as ships. The air was heavy with the smell of burnt circuits and engine oil. Among the debris moved Jackson Vire, a human mechanic with a reputation for fixing what others called impossible. His own freighter was modest, patched up more times than he could count, but it flew, and that was all that mattered. Jackson's boots clanged against the metal floors of the floating scrapyard. He adjusted his worn jacket and scanned the area. Most of the ships here were ancient alien vessels, abandoned by their creators when technology evolved beyond them. Traders often warned him away, claiming the place was cursed, but Jackson never cared for rumors. He liked the scrapyard. It was honest. Nothing here pretended to be worth more than it was. Another day, another pile of junk, Jackson muttered, pushing a floating panel aside. Sparks flew as he tapped a console with his gloved hand. A faint hum vibrated through the floor, something deep and rhythmic like a heartbeat. He frowned. It wasn't his freighter's engine, nor any ship he had seen in years. He followed the sound, ducking under broken beams and sidestepping shattered control panels. The hum grew stronger as he neared a dark corner of the scrapyard. There, half buried under twisted metal and debris, was a starship unlike any he had seen. Its hull was massive, sleek and black, streaked with the scars of old battles. Strange alien glyphs ran along its sides, glowing faintly as if acknowledging his presence. Jackson froze. He had seen plenty of discarded ships, but this was different. The alien hull seemed almost alive, pulsing gently beneath his touch. It wasn't just a ship, it was a machine with history, with purpose. Worthless, a voice echoed from a nearby trading post. Jackson looked over to see an alien, thin and scaly, waving at him. That ship has killed more crews than it has carried. Don't touch it, human. Jackson ignored the warning. Most aliens feared what they didn't understand. Humans did not. They adapted. They fixed. They survived. He stepped closer, placing his hand on the cold metal of the hull. The hum became a resonance that vibrated in his chest. Then came the whisper, not a voice in words, but a thought, a strange alien intelligence reaching out, curious, testing him. "What are you?" Jackson asked aloud, almost instinctively. "Why are you here?" There was no reply, at least not in words. The ship's systems blinked on, lights flickering along the hull like tiny stars awakening. Panels shifted and realigned, doors opening slowly as if inviting him in. Jackson felt a thrill he hadn't felt in years. This was no ordinary scrap. He had stumbled onto something extraordinary. He crouched to examine a nearby data pad. Dust and corrosion had eaten at its surface, but some symbols remained visible. It told a story, partly erased, partly intact. The ship had once been a war vessel built to dominate whole star systems. Its creators, however, had deemed it uncontrollable, too aggressive, too stubborn, too alive. That was the judgment scrawled across the data pad. Jackson chuckled softly. "Sounds like my kind of ship." Hours passed as he circled the vessel, inspecting its systems and poking at its core. Surprisingly, some mechanisms responded to him, aligning as if recognizing a competent hand. The ship's internal temperature stabilized, a sign that its power cells still held charge. If he could get it operational, even partially, it would be like nothing the galaxy had seen before. But there were challenges. The scrapyard was patrolled by alien scavengers, and most of the technology was unfamiliar, advanced beyond human standards. Still, Jackson was nothing if not resourceful. He made mental notes of what he would need: energy cells, interface converters, and a lot of courage. As he worked, he imagined what the galaxy would say if a human managed to revive a ship like this. It would be impossible, absurd even. Yet he felt no fear. Fear was a luxury humans could not afford in a galaxy ruled by powers that underestimated them at every turn. "Why are you calling to me?" Jackson whispered, crouched in the shadow of the alien hull. Again the hum responded, rising in pitch as if acknowledging his question. It was not hostility he felt from the ship, but curiosity, a testing of the waters. A sudden movement caught his eye. A small drone, scavenging for parts, drifted toward the ship. Jackson tensed, knowing it could trigger alarms or even defensive systems. With a flick of his hand, he activated his own tools, sending a magnetic pulse that gently pushed the drone away. The ship responded, doors sliding open to reveal a dimly lit corridor, as if saying, "You may enter." Heart pounding, Jackson stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of old circuits and alien alloys. Panels glowed faintly, and the walls seemed to pulse with a rhythm matching the hum he had felt outside. The ship's interior was enormous, far larger than its exterior suggested. Massive engines lined the sides, dormant but intact. Control rooms and crew quarters were empty, silent witnesses to battles long past. Jackson ran his fingers along a console, and to his amazement, it lit up under his touch. Symbols he could not understand glowed in sequence, and a holographic map flickered to life above the panel. Star systems, coordinates, and energy readings filled the display. The ship was showing him its memories, fragments of its life before being abandoned. A warning light flashed suddenly, a signal from the ship itself, not any external system. Jackson froze. "It's alive," he realized. "It's aware." "All right," he muttered, more to himself than to the ship. "If you're alive, then I'm alive. Let's see if we can help each other." For the first time, the ship responded more clearly. Panels shifted to form pathways, a gentle vibration passing through the floor. It was a language of movement and energy, not words, but Jackson understood. The ship was not just a tool, it was a partner, and it had chosen him. He spent the next few hours exploring, documenting everything he could. Every panel, every engine, every corridor offered clues to how he might bring the ship back to life. Sparks flew as he made minor adjustments, rerouting power and reconnecting damaged circuits. Slowly, the hum grew louder, more insistent, almost like a heartbeat syncing with his own. Outside, the sun of a nearby star reflected off the scrapyard, casting long shadows across the floating debris. Traders passed by, eyeing the massive hull with curiosity and fear. Jackson ignored them. This was his discovery, his challenge, and for the first time in a long while he felt hope. By the time night fell over the planet below, he had made a decision. He would tow the ship out of the scrapyard, back to his own workshop, and attempt the impossible. Others would call him reckless, insane even. But humans had always thrived on the impossible, and Jackson Vire was no ordinary human. As he prepared the tow lines, the ship's hum shifted again, warmer, stronger. It was ready, or perhaps it had been ready all along. Jackson smiled beneath his helmet. "Let's wake you up," he said, voice steady. "Let's show the galaxy what a human and a starship can do together." The engines of his freighter roared to life, and the massive alien hull slowly began to move, guided by tugs and tethered by hope. Sparks and small explosions marked the ship's awakening, but it did not resist. Instead, it seemed to cooperate, testing its systems carefully, responding to Jackson's touch and commands. As they left the scrapyard behind, drifting into the open corridor of space, Jackson felt a thrill he had never known. The galaxy had ignored this ship. It had ignored him. But together, they might just change everything. And somewhere deep within the alien hull, the ship pulsed with recognition. It was alive. It had been waiting. And now it had a human mechanic to guide it. The adventure had begun. Jackson Vire's freighter creaked under the strain of towing the massive alien starship through the empty corridor of space. Each slow inch they moved, the alien vessel seemed to respond, its hull pulsing with an almost nervous energy. It was as if it had been asleep for centuries and was now stretching its limbs for the first time. The journey to Jackson's hidden workshop, orbiting a minor, uninhabited planet was long and dangerous. Even though the area was far from trade routes, scavengers and rogue patrols sometimes drifted through, and one wrong encounter could destroy both vessels. But Jackson didn't care. His mind was completely focused on the Starship. "I've seen a lot of ships, old and new," Jackson muttered to himself, adjusting the tow lines. "But nothing like you, not even close." The alien ship responded, or so it felt to him. The hum, once steady, now rose and fell like a breath. Lights along the hull blinked in a sequence, almost like it was thinking, communicating, and testing him at the same time. Jackson had worked on machines with AI before, but this was different. This was a mind. A mind that had been locked away for decades, waiting for someone to unlock it. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the creak of metal and the distant roar of Jackson's freighter engines. Finally, they arrived at the hidden workshop, a massive floating structure carved out of an asteroid, shielded from sensors, filled with tools, energy cores, and spare parts. "Here we go," Jackson said, securing the Starship. He guided it into a docking bay that barely fit its massive hull. The walls groaned under the strain as the alien vessel settled into place. For the first time, Jackson could inspect the ship properly. Its hull was scratched, scorched, and scarred from battles long forgotten. Panels shifted slightly as he walked along the sides, revealing ports, conduits, and alien circuitry that seemed alive. Every touch elicited a faint vibration, as if the ship were acknowledging his presence. Jackson's heart raced. "I don't know if you can hear me or see me or even understand me," he said, "but I'm going to wake you up, and I'm going to do it right." He spent hours analyzing the ship's core systems. The alien engineering was unlike anything human technology had ever produced. Energy conduits that pulsed with colors Jackson had no names for, control panels that shifted shape depending on who touched them, engines that seemed capable of bending physics. Even the smallest misstep could trigger a catastrophic failure. Still, Jackson worked. He rewired damaged circuits, replaced corroded energy cells, and slowly brought power to dormant systems. As he worked, the ship responded in subtle ways. Lights pulsed in sync with his movements, panels opened and closed gently, and the hum grew warmer, more harmonious. Then came the first real test. Jackson reached for the main control console, the heart of the ship. As his fingers hovered over the alien symbols, the ship resisted. Panels shifted abruptly, doors closed, and the hum rose to a high-pitched wail. It was a warning. The ship was alive and wary. Jackson froze. His mind raced. "I'm not your enemy," he said calmly. "I want to help. I want to fix you, but I need you to trust me." Slowly, cautiously, the doors reopened. A small corridor lit up, revealing the interior of the ship. The hum softened. It was a test, and Jackson knew he had passed. Over the next few days, he worked tirelessly. He learned the ship's patterns, the way it responded to touch, sound, and even mood. Slowly, it began to trust him. Systems that had refused activation now hummed with energy. Engines that had been silent for decades flickered to life. And always the hum, the ship's heartbeat, matched the rhythm of Jackson's own. One night, as Jackson rested against a console, the ship pulsed differently. A holographic display flickered to life, projecting a star map and fragments of alien text. Symbols he couldn't understand shifted and rotated, forming patterns that suggested memory, thought, and awareness. The ship wasn't just alive, it remembered. Battles fought, crews lost, victories won, and regrets carried. And through it all, it had waited for someone to understand it. Jackson studied the display carefully. "You've seen so much," he whispered, "but you've never had a partner, have you?" The ship's hum responded, almost thoughtfully. Panels shifted, creating a pathway deeper into its core. There, Jackson found the central interface, a spherical chamber filled with glowing alien conduits, all converging on a crystalline core. It pulsed with energy, alive, aware, and powerful beyond imagination. "This is it," Jackson said, awestruck. This is where you think. This is where you live." He reached out, touching the core gently. The ship pulsed stronger, vibrating through the floor and walls, through his body and deep into his chest. A rush of information flooded his mind, not words, not images, but feelings. Battles, fear, pride, loss, and hope. He felt the weight of centuries compressed into moments. "I won't hurt you," he said, steadying himself. "I'm not here to control you. I'm here to help you, together." The ship responded with a brighter pulse, lights dancing along its hull in patterns that felt like laughter. Jackson laughed too, relief and excitement mixing in a way that left him breathless. For the first time, the ship fully awakened. Engines roared softly, systems aligning, shields flickering in preparation. It was ready to move, to fight, and to protect. And it had chosen a human, an unpredictable, clever, stubborn species that it could rely on. Jackson spent the next week running tests. He piloted the ship through simulations, carefully mapping its responses. The ship was fast, far faster than any human vessel he had ever worked with. Its weapons systems were dormant but fully functional, capable of firing with precision that seemed almost sentient. And through it all, it listened. Not blindly, but intelligently, adapting to his commands while offering suggestions in its own alien way. Word began to spread, small, scattered transmissions intercepted by traders and nearby stations. A human had revived a long-forgotten starship, and no one knew what it could do. Some dismissed it as rumor, others as exaggeration. But fear is always slow to form, and curiosity is faster than caution. One night, while Jackson rested in his cabin, a small alarm went off. Not a warning, but a message, a sequence of pulses from the ship itself. It projected an image of distant star systems and fleets. Ships that had once rejected it were still out there, wary of a vessel that had survived human hands. Jackson leaned forward, studying the projection. "You want to go out there," he said softly, "to show them what you can do." The ship pulsed brightly, almost like a nod. Its hum resonated through the docking bay, filling the asteroid with energy. It was ready. Not just to move, not just to fight, but to learn, adapt, and show the galaxy that it had a new pilot. Jackson smiled, excitement and fear mixing in equal measure. "All right," he whispered. "Let's take the first step together. We'll start small, test your limits, learn each other. Then we'll see what the galaxy thinks of us." The first flight was cautious. The ship moved slowly out of the docking bay, sensors scanning the empty corridors of space. Its engines hummed with power, systems alive in a way that Jackson had never imagined. He felt the ship's mind brushing against his own, curious, testing, learning. And he responded instinctively, guiding it, coaxing it, teaching it. By the end of the day, they had completed simple maneuvers, navigating asteroid fields, testing speed and agility. The alien starship, once feared and rejected, was now fully operational, and it had a human pilot it trusted implicitly. As they rested in orbit, Jackson looked out at the stars. Somewhere beyond, alien fleets, governments, and traders were unaware that something extraordinary had awakened. And yet, he could feel it, an intuition that the galaxy was about to notice. For the first time in centuries, the starship was not alone. And humanity, through a single mechanic, had found a way to awaken a giant that could change everything. The adventure was only beginning. The emptiness of space stretched endlessly before Jackson Vire and the alien starship. Beyond the safety of the hidden asteroid workshop, the void was filled with unseen dangers, rogue fleets, pirates, and alien patrols that never forgave weakness. Jackson knew this well. Humans had always survived in hostile environments by thinking fast and daring even faster. And today they were going to test the limits of both him and the ship. "Ready?" Jackson asked aloud, though he knew the ship could hear him in its own way. Its hum responded with a rising pitch as if acknowledging the question. Jackson grinned. "All right then. Let's see what you've got." He guided the ship into open space, practicing maneuvers that would have been impossible for a human freighter alone. The alien vessel moved with grace and speed, turning, twisting, and adjusting faster than any human mind could fully comprehend. Its systems were learning, adapting to him as he adapted to it. Together, they were not just a human and a ship. They were a single unit, an organism in its own right. Hours passed as they tested agility, shields, and weapon systems. The Starship was more than alive, it was intelligent. When Jackson hesitated, unsure if a maneuver was safe, the ship subtly corrected, preventing disaster. When he pushed it too hard, engines flared but stabilized at the last moment. They were learning each other. Then the sensors blinked. A fleet appeared on the radar, dozens of alien warships moving in formation. Jackson squinted at the readouts. These were not pirates. These were the same species that had originally built and rejected the Starship, the ones who had feared its power. And now they had found it. "They came for you," Jackson whispered, feeling the tension in his chest. "Or maybe they came for me." The ship responded, its hum rising sharply. Lights along the hull brightened as shields activated. Jackson could feel its excitement and caution, a mix of curiosity and anticipation. It was not afraid, not entirely, but it knew danger, and it trusted him to lead. The alien fleet moved closer, weapons charged and scanning. Their communication was clear. The ship was to be destroyed on sight. Jackson's heart pounded. There was no backup, no escape route, but humans had a habit of surviving impossible odds. "Okay," Jackson said to himself. "Time to see what we can really do." He maneuvered the Starship in a series of rapid twists and turns, dodging initial scans and minor attacks. The ship responded instantly, engines flaring and shields adjusting in real time. Lasers streaked past them, hitting asteroids and creating brilliant explosions in the void. Jackson's fingers moved over the controls with instinctive precision, feeling the ship's own intelligence guiding him, warning him, helping him survive. The fleet attacked in waves, expecting the Starship to falter. But Jackson and the vessel were a single unit now. Weapons systems activated, not to kill, but to disable. Energy pulses knocked out engines, shields, and weapons of enemy ships without destroying crews. The Starship had learned restraint, a lesson perhaps no alien engineer had ever taught it. One ship, larger than the others, broke formation and charged directly. Jackson braced for impact. The alien Starship reacted with speed that shocked him. The hull twisted mid-flight, turning the attacking vessel's trajectory against itself. Shields flared as it collided with another ship, causing a chain reaction. Jackson felt a thrill of excitement. "We're good," he said, laughing despite the danger. The ship's hum responded, a deep vibration of satisfaction and agreement. As the battle continued, Jackson realized something remarkable. The alien fleet had underestimated him, and humans in general. They expected a mechanic, a simple human, to be no threat. They did not account for the ingenuity, adaptability, and audacity of a species that thrived against impossible odds. Minutes passed, which felt like hours. The fleet's numbers dwindled as more ships were disabled or forced to retreat. Jackson piloted the Starship with growing confidence, testing boundaries, trusting its intelligence. Every move was a learning experience for both of them. Finally, the last ship attempted a desperate maneuver, firing a concentrated energy beam at the Starship. Jackson anticipated it, guiding the vessel in a sharp, precise twist. The beam missed, striking an asteroid and creating a massive explosion that illuminated the void. The remaining ships disengaged, leaving Jackson and the alien Starship alone, victorious. The hum of the ship softened, returning to its usual rhythm. Lights along the hull pulsed gently, almost like a sigh of relief. Jackson slumped in his seat, adrenaline fading. "We did it," he whispered. "You did it. We did it together." He floated to the viewing window, staring out at the distant stars. Somewhere beyond, alien governments, fleets, and traders would have noticed the absence of their ships, Rumors would spread, fear would grow. And humanity, through one mechanic and a starship long feared, had begun to make its mark. The alien vessel, once rejected, now fully alive, had shown a lesson it had never learned from its creators. The galaxy underestimated humans at its own peril. Days passed as Jackson and the ship returned to the asteroid workshop. Repairs were made to minor damage, and Jackson continued to study the vessel, learning from its systems and its responses. It shared knowledge with him in subtle ways, optimized energy flows, advanced navigation techniques, and even fragments of its battle history. Jackson absorbed it all, feeling his own understanding of technology grow beyond human limits. During one quiet moment, the ship projected a holographic star map, marking locations of major fleets, colonies, and strategic points. Jackson traced the lines of potential threats and opportunities. "We're going to have to be careful," he said. "But I think we can do more than just survive now." The ship pulsed in agreement. It had fought and won, but it had also learned trust, patience, and the value of cooperation. And in a galaxy where fear was often the greatest weapon, it now understood that a human could wield it in ways aliens could never predict. Word spread quickly. Traders whispered about a human piloting a starship feared by entire empires. Governments began to take notice. Rumors grew into reports. Some laughed, dismissing it as exaggeration. Others shivered, realizing the potential threat. One night, Jackson stood outside his workshop, staring at the distant stars. The alien starship hovered silently nearby, engines idle but alive. "We've tested ourselves," he said, "and the galaxy is starting to notice." The ship pulsed gently in response, almost like a nod. Together, they had survived a battle that should have destroyed them. Together, they had learned and adapted. And together, they were about to change the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. The test of fire had ended, but the real challenge, the one that would shake empires and ignite fear, was only beginning. And Jackson smiled. Humans had a habit of surviving the impossible. Now, they would make others fear it too. The victory over the alien fleet was still fresh in Jackson Vyer's mind. Even after days in the quiet of his hidden asteroid workshop, the events replayed vividly. Ships falling in unexpected patterns, energy pulses disabling weapons, and the alien starship responding with a speed and intelligence no human could have predicted. But victory was only the beginning. Word of the battle spread faster than Jackson could imagine. Traders and scouts whispered of the human mechanic and the colossal alien starship. Rumors transformed into reports, and reports into urgent communications across the galaxy. Governors, admirals, and councils began to take notice. Entire species who had never feared humanity before now paused, uncertain and wary. Jackson studied the reports with a mix of disbelief and satisfaction. The starship hovered beside him, humming gently, its systems glowing faintly. The bond between them had grown stronger over weeks of working, learning, and surviving together. "They're starting to notice us," Jackson said softly. Do you understand what that means?" The ship pulsed in response, bright lights running along its hull. Its hum seemed almost thoughtful. Yes, it understood. It knew what humans could achieve when underestimated. And it knew that their survival instincts were not just clever, they were frightening to those who relied solely on power and tradition. The first message came from the Galactic Council, a governing body made up of dozens of alien species. Their tone was formal, cautious, and filled with veiled threats. They demanded that the starship be surrendered immediately. Humans, they warned, were not equipped to handle such power. Jackson read the message aloud, shaking his head. "They don't know us at all." The ship pulsed brighter, as if agreeing. Its systems projected holographic lines tracing the routes of council ships and patrols, analyzing positions and strategies. Jackson studied the map, a grin spreading across his face. "Looks like we'll have to show them the truth," he said. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Jackson upgraded the Starship systems wherever possible, incorporating his own human ingenuity with the alien technology. Shields were strengthened, engines optimized, and weapon systems recalibrated, not just for battle but for efficiency, control, and precision. Every adjustment made the Starship more responsive, more alive, more unstoppable. When they finally emerged from the hidden asteroid field, the galaxy was watching. The first patrols arrived, scanning for anomalies. Jackson maneuvered the ship deliberately, not hiding, not fleeing. The ship pulsed proudly as it rose into open space. It was time to show that humans were not to be ignored. The alien patrols approached cautiously. Sensors detected energy fluctuations far beyond their expectations. Even the most experienced commanders hesitated. Then the first message came through, a challenge. "Human," it said in the Universal Translator, "surrender this vessel or face destruction." Jackson smiled. "You don't understand humans," he said. "We survive, we adapt, and we don't surrender." The Starship responded immediately. Energy fields flared, shields brightened, and the hum rose to a deep, resonant roar. Without firing a shot, the alien ships hesitated, unsure of what they faced. The vessel moved with precision, positioning itself in patterns that disrupted sensors and confused targeting systems. The patrols had power, numbers, and experience, but they lacked unpredictability. Jackson guided the Starship through a series of maneuvers that no human freighter alone could accomplish. Energy pulses disabled weapons systems of the alien ships, forcing them to retreat without harm to their crews. It was a lesson in power and restraint, a statement that humans could wield strength intelligently. Word spread quickly across the galaxy. Traders and scouts who witnessed the encounter relayed messages to their home systems. "A human commands a starship feared by empires," they said. "It moves, it fights, and it does not kill unnecessarily. The galaxy must pay attention." Within the council chambers, panic began to spread. Leaders who had dismissed humanity as insignificant were forced to reconsider. Reports of disabled fleets, alien ships retreating, and a human-led vessel operating with precision beyond expectation circulated rapidly. Fear began to grow not just for the Starship but for humanity itself. Jackson felt the shift keenly. "They're starting to understand," he whispered to the ship. "They're realizing that humans were not like them." The ship pulsed in response, almost like a nod. It had learned more than human tactics and strategy. It had learned the power of fear, the weight of presence, and the influence of reputation. Together, they were an unstoppable duo, a human mind guiding a living warship that had once been feared even by its own creators. The first direct challenge came from a war council of multiple alien species. Their message was clear: surrender the Starship or face annihilation. Jackson read the message aloud, eyes narrowing. "They still don't get it. They think threats can intimidate humans." He spent hours plotting, using the ship's intelligence and his own human intuition. They moved strategically, showing presence in key sectors, disabling small fleets and leaving subtle signs of power. Each action was calculated to demonstrate capability without unnecessary destruction. The galaxy watched, and fear spread. In every system they visited, aliens whispered. Entire species reconsidered their stance on humans. What had once been a minor species, ignored and underestimated, was now a force to be respected, feared, and, most importantly, never underestimated. Jackson marveled at the realization. Humans had survived against impossible odds on countless planets, in countless wars. But now, in the galaxy itself, they had a voice, a presence, and power. And it was the combination of human ingenuity and the alien starships that commanded respect. The starship's hum was steady, proud, almost joyful. It had been rejected, abandoned, and feared for centuries. Now, with a human mechanic guiding it, it was alive in a way it had never been before. and it understood that this human, clever, bold, and fearless, was the perfect partner. Weeks turned into months. Jackson and the ship continued their journey, visiting strategic points, observing alien fleets, and demonstrating capability. The galaxy slowly adjusted to a new reality. Humans were not just survivors. They were innovators, strategists, and when necessary, a force of fear. At last, the Galactic Council convened an emergency meeting. Alien leaders debated in heated voices, strategists argued over tactics, and advisors whispered warnings. The reports were unanimous. The human mechanic and the alien starship could not be controlled, predicted, or ignored. Humanity had proven itself. Jackson watched the holographic reports with amusement. "They finally understand," he said quietly. "Not just me, not just the ship, humans." The starship pulsed in agreement. Together, they had rewritten the rules. Humans were no longer just survivors. They were a species that inspired fear through intelligence, adaptability, and courage. And in the quiet of the asteroid workshop, Jackson smiled. The galaxy had learned a lesson: never underestimate humans. For the first time in centuries, humanity had earned its place, not as pawns, not as observers, but as a force that could shape the galaxy itself. The alien starship, once abandoned and feared, had become a symbol of human potential. Its hum resonated through space, a heartbeat of power, partnership, and promise. Jackson knew one thing with certainty: this was only the beginning. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again, and that was exactly the point. The adventure was far from over, but the message was clear. Humans were not just survivors. They were a species to be reckoned with. The galaxy had learned fear, and it had learned it from a human mechanic and a starship that refused to die.